What's up, y'all? I said, what's up, y'all? Look at me when I'm talking to you, bro. Nah, I'm just messing with y'all, man. This is your boy Knockout Boxing 86 TV, and we in here. So check this out, y'all. Before we get going on our video, smash the like button, subscribe to the channel if you're new here, share the video, turn on your notifications, and go follow me on Twitter at KOBoxing86TV. If you got a breakdown or a prediction you want me to do, knockoutboxing86@yahoo.com is the email address. And also, don't forget about our live shows. I'm live every Wednesday night, 7:30 p.m. Central Time. Every Friday night, 7:30 p.m. Central Time. And then you can also catch me live every Sunday morning, 9 a.m. Central Standard Time. This week, though, since we got a fight on Friday, we'll be doing our live shows Wednesday and Thursday, and then Sunday, so that we can do the prediction show on Thursday, so that way we can predict the fights for Friday and Saturday, and then our regular show on Wednesday, and then Sunday morning, 9 a.m. with the Singing OG KQKC Boxing Network. So y'all be sure to check out the great live shows we got coming your way this week. Now let's get to the video. I just watched the Jermell Charlo Brian Custer interview. Shout out to Brian Custer. Y'all go subscribe to the Last Stand podcast. He got much more following and much more subscribers than me, but you know, I'd be remiss if I didn't say I appreciate the great work that brother is doing, and give him a shout out, and make sure that y'all go subscribe. The Last Stand podcast, man, if you haven't already. Great interviews, great content, really truly one of the best at what he does here in this fight game. Now, Jermell Charlo said a lot in his interview with Brian Custer, and we want to focus on two key topics. Number one, him and Brian Castano, and number two, what he had to say about Terence Crawford, right? So, Jermell Charlo think Brian Castano full of shit, right? He don't think that man is injured. He think he's cheating. He's faking an injury to. He talked about drug testing and how Castano and him haven't been drug tested, and how the WBC dropped the ball and told him that you have to ask for drug testing when that's definitely not supposed to be the case or the protocol. And he believes Brian Castano is full of it, faking his injury. He's tried to show some videos and photos of Brian Castano lifting the alleged injured arm up above, you know, running this shit normal. And so Jermell Charlo don't believe shit. You know, he went in on Brian Castano's manager and said this is the same manager of Marcos Maidana who tried to pull one over on Floyd Mayweather. You remember the whole glove situation and glove fiasco between Team Mayweather and Team Maidana leading up to their fight. And so he ain't buying shit from Brian Castano. And my thoughts on it are this, right? So, twofold for Jermell Charlo. You have to control what you can control. I tell my children that. I tell employees that all the time that work with me on my job. Like, you have to control what you can control if you're Jermell Charlo. And that is coming in the best shape of your life, focusing on your game plan, and really the type of mind, how volatile that Jermell Charlo is, how high-strung he can be, and how emotional he can be at going off. He needs to focus all that energy and all that mind. I don't think he compartmentalizes good enough to be able to have all that shit that he's saying about Brian Castano and focus on the fight plan, focus on adjustments. And you just look at his history. When he was fighting Tony Harrison, Derrick James got very upset with him. And the first time I seen Derrick James visibly upset in the fighter's corner during the fight, because Jermell Charlo just wasn't listening. You fast forward to the first Brian Castano fight again. Well, for whatever reason, I can hear Derrick James with my own ears barking out good instructions. Push him back with your jab. He can't fight going backwards. Stay off the ropes. When you get in the ropes, that's the only time that you get into trouble. Keep the fight in the center of the ring where you have all the advantages. Just great instruction after great instruction after great instruction. And for whatever reason, Jermell Charlo couldn't execute the game plan. So again, control what you can control. If you that dude, if you the man at 154 pounds, don't worry about what Castano got going on. Look at it as a blessing for you. That's more time for you to prepare. More time for you to get in even better shape. More time for you to game plan. That's the shit that you can control. Jermell Charlo worrying about Brian Castano showing videos and shit like that. Like, bro, that's not going to help you in the fight. You feel what I'm saying? He did also say he going to knock Brian Castano ass out. So I'm not saying that he's not focused. I'm just saying if you had to be critical of something, I would just say focus more on your fight. You know what I'm saying? Focus more on the shit that you can control. Because there's so much in the fight game. Your opponent, the judges, the referee, the powers that be in the business of boxing, who they really want to win. This shit is so much that you can't control in life and in boxing that you got to control what you can control. So for him, I wouldn't even worry too much about the Castano shit, bro. Like, it is what it is with that. For Brian Castano, my thoughts are very simple. That man ain't giving me any reason as a boxing fan to doubt that he's a clean fighter. He hasn't tested positive for anything. The WBC not testing him or not doing what they're supposed to do. It's hard to hold that against Brian Castano because the WBC creates franchise belts. They'll have fighters test positive and then change the rules for them. They'll say a fighter is undisputed, then say a fighter is not undisputed. And they're just extremely corrupt, bro. So I'm not going to put their corruption on every fighter just because he's of, you know, Argentinian, Mexican, Puerto Rican, Dominican, just because he's a Latino descent. Like, I'm not putting that on Castano. So I'm going to view him as a clean fighter. I'm going to say that he really was injured, and hopefully he recovers. Hopefully he has a good enough camp, and we get this shit popping on May 14th. And that's my thoughts on that whole situation from both Charlo's aspect and Castano's aspect. Now, for what Jermell Charlo said about Terence Bud Crawford, look, he said he'll knock his ass out, but he also, but he said, leave me alone, bro. Like, you got unfinished business at 147. You need to fight Errol Spence. And he said the problem with Terence Crawford is he don't want to humble himself. He don't want to humble himself. He don't want to, you know, have to take less money or a little bit less to make the fight with Errol Spence happen. And that Jermell Charlo, instead of Crawford focusing on him and talking about he want the winner of Castano and Charlo, he need to focus on making the fight happen with Errol Spence. Look, man, as far as Charlo knocking Terence Crawford out, listen, that's a great fight, 154. If you told me that fight got made, like, I wouldn't be mad at that shit. I wouldn't be like, oh, it's a trash-ass fight. But I will say this. I agree with the unfinished business aspect of it. The same way I don't want Errol Spence moving up to 154 without getting that Terence Bud Crawford smoke. It just is what it is, bro. That's a fight that got to happen for both of y'all. And I don't want Terence Crawford talking about moving up or trying to move up to try to get Jermell Charlo when he need to get that Errol Spence smoke, bro. They both need to fight each other. And furthermore, it's a couple of things that goes against Terence Crawford even getting the winner of that fight. Number one, you think the PBC and Al Heyman got all this stuff put together. They got 3 belts on the line. They done paid people step-aside money for the WBA. They got Spence going over there to get the IBF from Kell Brook. They made Spence versus Porter. They got a high-priced mandatory out the way between Spence and Danny Garcia. Now they got another mandatory out the way with the WBA, and now we getting Spence and Ugas. If you believe that Al Heyman and the PBC paid all this money, made all these moves to get this 3-belt unification, only to get to 1 fight away from undisputed in the welterweight division, and then allow Terence Crawford to go make a fight with another fighter in their stable instead of Errol Spence or Udinese Ugas for undisputed, you really think they're going to make that fight? You really think that they, like, if Brian Castano win, you think that the PBC is going to be like, yeah, Crawford, move up. We gonna make the fight between you and Brian Castano. Or if Charlo win, yeah, move up, Crawford. We going to make the fight between you and Jermell Charlo. The only fight right now for Terence Crawford over at the PBC, the only fighter that he going to fight from there, bro, Keith Thurman ain't on the table for his ass. Miss me with that. Danny Garcia ain't on the table for his ass. Jermell Charlo, Brian Castano, none of those on the table for him, bro. It's going to have to be Errol Spence. They didn't come this close to undisputed, make all these moves and make all this shit happen, pay step-aside money and sanctioning fees and move this and move that. They didn't do all that shit to get to 1 fight from undisputed and not try to go make that fight. That's why it baffles me and I laugh when people are like, oh, man, they PBC, they don't want the fight. You hear Tim Smith? Yeah, he trying to negotiate. He trying to drive Terence Crawford price down. That's why he's saying that shit, bro. Trying to get him to take less. They trying to big boy him because they know he ain't got no network and he ain't got no promoter no more. That's business. But their actions, the way that they have been moving, the fights that they have been making, have let you know that they are trying to appease Errol Spence and what he wants, which is to go for undisputed. And then there's this notion, and then there's this other thing that I think is a pretty good point. But I wanna bring this to y'all too, because when I say what I just said, people would tell me, well, Knockout, the PBC would have no choice, because Terence Bud Crawford, as the WBO Super Champion, he could just move up. He could just move up, and he could just become the mandatory for the winner of Brian Custer and Jermell Charlo. That's not true, bro. That's not true. See, people got to read the rules a little bit better and really understand the rules a lot better than they do. So when Terence Crawford moved up for 140, and he went up to 147, he was able to go ahead and fight Jeff Horn because no mandatory had filed paperwork. But when you have already filed your paperwork as the mandatory and it's been accepted, the champion from the lower weight class cannot move up and immediately fight the champion. He would have to fight you in the interim WBO championship fight. So look at what's going on with Demetrius Andrade. He wanted to move up and immediately become Canelo Alvarez's mandatory at 168 pounds. But Zach Parker, the WBO #1 contender at 168 pounds and the current mandatory for Canelo Alvarez, had already filed his paperwork. So as a result, Demetrius Andrade has to fight Zach Parker at 168 pounds in an interim WBO title fight because paperwork was already filed from Zach Parker and Andrade wasn't allowed to just skip over him. But he is allowed to skip over everybody else and fight Zach Parker to see who becomes Canelo Alvarez's mandatory. That's what's going on right there. You look at the situation, we're going to drop a video on it later. Again, Janabek Alimkhanuly, he already filed his paperwork to become Demetrius Andrade's mandatory at 160 pounds. But Jaime Munguia, now he wants to, as the #1 contender, he want to do the same thing. And the former champion down there at 154 pounds, he wants to do the same thing, and he wants to become the mandatory for Andrade. But he can't just skip Janabek because Janabek paperwork is already filed. So what are they doing? They're making them fight in an interim fight to see who will get the challenge for Demetrius Andrade's WBO belt. So this notion that you can just move up and you can just fight for a title, that's only if the person that's already the #1 contender hasn't filed for their mandatory position yet. And you look at what Terence Crawford would be doing, we'll go back to this situation, he would want to move up and try to immediately challenge the winner of Charlo and Castano. He couldn't do that because Tim Tszyu, the #1 contender at 154 pounds, has already filed his mandatory paperwork. He's already stepped aside once to make this Charlo and Castano fight happen. So if Terence Crawford does move up and he wants to become the mandatory for that WBO 154-pound belt, they would order a fight between Tim Tszyu and Terence Crawford for an interim WBO title, and the winner of that fight would then become the mandatory and be able to fight the winner of Charlo and Castano. So it's more shit in the way than y'all think if you're really paying attention and you really go look at the rules and how things really operate in that specific sanctioning body. And it's all out there for you. You can just look up the WBO rules and regulations, and you can find all this information for yourself. So he couldn't even move up and challenge for the winner of that fight if he wanted to, because Tim Tszyu would be in the way, as is Zach Parker being in the way for Demetrius Andrade right now. When he did it at 147 for Jeff Horn had just beat Manny Pacquiao. There was no new mandatory. No one had filed paperwork, and then boom, Terence Crawford could exercise that clause, move up, and I get the challenge for 147-pound belts. At 154, there's already a mandatory in place. There's already somebody waiting for that shot. So Terence Crawford couldn't skip the line. He'd have to fight that person. He could skip the line somewhat. He could skip the line up to #1, fight that person, and then the winner between him and Tim Tszyu would be the mandatory at that point. But he can't just move up in this certain situation and challenge for the winner of Jermell Charlo and Brian Castano. So for all of those reasons, bro, you just got to stay at 147. See what happened between Spence and Ugas, and you need to fight the winner for Undisputed. And for all my people of the Terence Crawford and Errol Spence and Errol Spence's Duck and Terence Crawford committee, let me ask you this. Wouldn't it be crazy Terence Crawford's last fight on Top Rank was against Sean Porter. Wouldn't it? How would your narrative of Errol Spence ducking Terence Crawford and he never really wanted to smoke, and you see his energy is different? How would that narrative change, or how would that narrative be exposed if Terence Crawford's very first fight from up under Top Rank? What if his very first fight, not signed to Bob Arum anymore, is an undisputed fight between Errol Spence and Terence Crawford? Bruh, slowly but surely, all these narratives are falling down, brick by brick and piece by piece. But overall, Jermell Charlo gave a great interview. I agree with a lot of what he said. I disagree. I'm not going to call Castano a cheater. I think Charlo needs to be more focused on the task at hand and quit worrying about what's going on with Castano. I think that he is right. Terence Bud Crawford does need to fight Errol Spence. And it's the fight that we all need to see. And I think that Terence Crawford needs to understand that, and his fans need to understand, he can't just go up there and challenge Castano or Charlo like that. He'd have to fight Tim Tszyu first. Just like Andrade, before he can be in position to fight for a title at 168 pounds, he got to fight Zach Parker first. It's the same thing, bro. You cannot just jump over somebody who already has their mandatory paperwork filed. Now, you can skip the line and fight them, but you don't get to skip them and just fight the champion. You got to beat them. That's the situation that Demetrius Andrade is in right now with Zach Parker. That's why he's having to fight him right now as we speak. But y'all let me know what y'all think, man. Comment down below, smash the like, subscribe to the channel, share the video, turn on your notifications, follow me on Twitter at KOBoxing86TV. If you got a breakdown or a prediction you want me to do, knockoutboxing86@yahoo.com is the email address. Live shows Wednesday night, 7:30 p.m. Live shows Friday night, 7:30 p.m. And you can catch me live Sunday morning, 9 a.m. Central Standard Time. However, this week we're going live Wednesday night and Thursday night because we do have a fight card on Friday that we'll be covering. There's a Showbox card on Showtime Friday night, so I want to be sure to give those fighters some time. Be sure to break down and predict those fights. So as a result, I'm going live Wednesday this week and Thursday this week so that we can be able to break down and predict those Friday night fights and the Saturday fights. So y'all tune in, man. I appreciate everybody's support. Enjoy the rest of your day. And with that, we out of here. Peace, y'all.